All right, part two of this is actually creating something. So one of the things that I learned when I learned 3D Studio Max, I learned it in an hour, just like less than. I was making objects in the first 5 minutes, and I'm going to show you the exact same thing that was showing to me. So don't let Max intimidate you with all this mess of buttons. I still don't use half of them. So very simply, we'll start with a plane, because you can make boxes and planes and other objects, which you can get into later. But literally, I learned from clicking plane and dragging in the screen and just making something like that. And now you've got a basic plane object, and it has some settings. It'll tell you its size or whatever it is in the game, or I'm sorry, in 3D Max. And you actually can change how many lines kind of exist on it, but on segments. But let's just make it one and one just for now. And once we've created this basic plane, it's just sort of a basic object in Max. It's a one-sided object. You can actually right-click from here. Oh, the window's not showing up. In here, there's options. I know you can't see them looking at the recording. There is an option to convert. So what you want to do is convert this thing to an editable poly. You'll see that in the list. All right. So now that I've converted it, see, now it just converted into this poly where I can actually grab what's called these selections. So you've got vertex, edge, border, polygon, and element. So what we can do with this, like polygon, is pretty simple. You can click it, drag over the object and select a vertex, and you can kind of manipulate this around. Edge is the same thing. You'll select any of these one-sided edges, and you can manipulate it. Border, anything on the outside edge of an object, it will select. So if this had, like, here's I'll do a quick. If I hold click and hold shift, I can select multiple edges, and there's a little button in here, like there's an edge editing now. I'll hit connect. It'll actually connect the two. And so now I have this extra edge in here, which is fine. If I go to border and select, you can see it leaves alone anything on the inside. It just wants outside edges. The polygon mode allows you to strictly select polygons. Here, I'll hit F2 to show like a selected highlight better. You can toggle that on and off if you want. And then element mode would basically select anything within that object element. When creating sort of like, when you're creating in this mode, this is what I do all my editing and creating in. There's a few tools you can use in here. So when you're in vertex mode, if you use remove, it will strictly remove that vertex from that corner. And from there, really, there's other than chamfer, I think, is really your only your best bet tool. From chamfer has this little box next to it. Instead of clicking it, click on the little box. Super handy. It brings up this little tool holder, which you can't see. Crap. It has a value on it where you can adjust. It's just basically a floating number. You can see my arrows sliding on the number value, but you can't see it. So that allows you to like select and collect edges. So if I unselect it, it goes back. But there's a little checkbox. But then you just hit that chamfer box again, and you can adjust this edge. In edge mode, that's where I do a lot of my primary work. So from here, this is the main bread and butter. So while in edge mode, if you hit shift and drag, you can start building objects. And this is what I do. You can grab any of the quad pieces. So shift, click down. So I'm building an object here. So what I'll do is I'll try to get my base shape just doing this. I'll do like a control click, and I can drag multiple edges at once. I'm just moving around so I can see what I'm doing. And so let's say I drag here and like, oh crap, I want these two to be connected. Now you can simply do this. There's actually a few ways you can do this. I'll do it some ways how I'll do it sometimes. So actually just click and drag up. So okay, now I've got this floating edge. I'm like, okay, I want to fill this gap. You can easily go into vertex mode. And let's see what, there's on top here, there's a button that's snap mode. If you click snap mode, you can click and it will snap onto place. So you can see how like it's almost like magnetic, how the vertexes wanted to snap to that object. And from there, if you right click on the snap toggle tool, I'm gonna do something quick. There we go. A little bit of a screen adjustment so I can click on tools so you can see them. So if you right click on there, you can go actually into your snap options. And by default, this might not be set, but for majority of the time, I just have only vertexes checked. So that way, if I'm turning my snaps on, they're snapping to those objects like that. So that was one way to connect these spaces. Another way, if you were in edge mode yet, you can hold control and click two edges like that. So go ahead and click on bridge from here, and that will connect pieces. So if you have, like right here, you can see I have like this little bit of an edge. Like you can see like there, I want to connect, let's say these two. I can hit bridge and it will snap, basically create a polygon in between the two like that. Now after I've gone and create whatever I'm making after the fact, I've got my base shape, I can go in and easily start adjusting these objects around, clicking on them and clicking on the move bar or the movement tool. Go into vertex mode and fine tune and move objects as I need to. Now let's say you've got this weird edge here where you're like, I want this edge to look like it comes down here. But you can see here, it's sort of got this in cut where these two are making the in bend, but I want it to come the other way. An easy one to do is select the vertexes you want to make the edge connect together, and actually you can go connect. That connect will draw a line between the two of them, and now you've got this edge that you were trying to get. So if you're trying to make something a little more organic and move it around, select view it from an edge where you can kind of see the surface a little bit, and then move around and move it how you want it to look. The move tool still works for all same things. For if you're in poly mode, everything that's doesn't have an edge, basically anything. When they say poly, it's not strictly quad. Like triangles only. It won't be just like strictly two triangles where this is. And if we actually go into edge turn mode while we're in poly mode, I'm sorry, edge mode, and there's a tool in here called turn. There it is. Once we turn on, you actually can see these dotted lines reaching out across the model. And those are actually like edges. They're just not part of that quad and how it's drawn. So like when I made a chamfered edges over here, it actually made several triangles to make this polygon, but they're all still part of the same piece. And that was actually something we could have done over here. You can turn where it's in turn mode. If you just click on them, they start spinning them in place. So if you're on this organic mesh piece, you can actually see how that started to twist it around a smidge. So if we have this vertex here way out, right? So all of a sudden we've created some those edges, right? And the same thing, if you want this edge cutting this other way, a lot of times I'll use the connect like I did before, where I go connect, and now all of a sudden now it's bent in. But if I am in the edge mode and go to turn, I can just simply click on that and it does the same thing. One of the last things to do when building your mesh is you can see like there's some weird shading, like there's some of these really hard edges going on, right? But you saw before when I was moving around this polygon that it doesn't matter what I was doing, they sort of shaded smoothly with each other, right? Well, that's called smoothing groups. So inside Max, there's this table of smoothing groups. And you can see one is highlighted when I select these. Over here, nothing is highlighted, all these polygons I created. I know before I probably showed you this earlier, but these are the tools I'm using. I'm just using shortcuts to select them. This is the move tool. Rotate tool, you can select on any axis. Scale tool if you really want. That's handy. And then this tool, select object, that's basically without any sort of no tools to get in the way. So if you're just selecting and doing smoothing groups like this, that's super handy. All right, so while we're in a smoothing group, let's say I'll bend this down just so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. If I select this one and unselect one, also now you see it's hard edged. They don't share the same smoothing group anymore. But if I add one back in there, no problem. But if I put two in there, nothing. There's that shared. So I'll put it back in one. Let's say I want to make this whole other thing its own smoothing group, just as one. That's a good way to start. You can actually see one. I think. Oh, I wonder why that is. Oops. Bumped the button. So, oh, there was one. There it is. This one had a smoothing group 1 on it. So I'm going to clear all. That's a nice way to just start from scratch. And so I'm going to select a different number, like just 4. So now you can see they all sort of like share the same sort of smooth mesh surface to them. They all share the same color. But let's say I made that break before. Like let's make a hard cut because we can't share. Smoothing groups have to be, they have to be their own polygon. They can't share in a group or share the surface smoothing within the same. So let's say I select these and I make them their own smoothing group. So now you can see how it looks like they're hard edge there. And something for fun. The reason why there's multiple here is so that you can create like a shared number. So like let's say like I decide I want these two to be smooth in this corner. So what I do is I can select these two and just select any one smoothing group, and now they're smooth together. So the smoothing groups are extremely powerful, and trying to, like if you're trying to build a low poly mesh, you can see there's not a lot of polygons in this object. But by playing with the smoothing system, you can easily create anything you want. Okay, I think that's the end of part